All right, we are good. So we're going to get started now. All right, thank you all for attending tonight on this incredibly hot day. All right, we are good. So we're going to get started now. All right, thank you all. Let me unmute myself. Okay, cool. Now we're good. I didn't want the YouTube video playing behind me there. All right, tonight is a fairly simple talk about approaches and options for managing inbound forms in Craft. We will talk about a couple different options from rolling your own solution to using a free plugin to using a paid plugin, using a third-party service, and then just a couple gotchas to watch out for on any approach. First, let's thank our wonderful food sponsor, SoulSpace, full stack agency specializing in craft development as well as Laravel, Node, and some custom API integrations. Been using websites and using Craft since it premiered in 2013. And brought over a lot of plugins from Expression Engine, longtime Expression Engine agency. A lot of their work involves e-commerce, high volume online publishing, and related to tonight, SoulSpace created and manages two of the most popular plugins available for Craft, Freeform and Calendar. Full disclosure, I do work for SoulSpace for like the last 5 years or so, but they are gracious enough to pay for all of our food at each meetup. So thank you to Mitchell and the team at SoulSpace. Also, thank you to Troy and the crew here at Mode for graciously hosting us tonight at their wonderful location. Mode's been in Charlotte for, 20 years plus, maybe. Yeah, creeping up on 20. Very creative brand agency, amazing work. I've worked with them in the past on some cool projects here and there. So thanks for you guys for bringing us in tonight. So like I said before, there's a ton of different options for approaching form management and support in Craft. You can roll your own solution with custom modules and plugins. You can use a free plugin that offers some minimal feature sets if that works with your business use case. We'll touch on some full-blown paid plugins that are super awesome, rich with features, integrations, and talk about some third-party solutions like Pardot and FormStack and some other options like that. And then we'll touch on each approach and solution and talk about kind of the benefits of each and when they would be appropriate for certain business use cases. We also have two remote presenting special guests to talk about their respective Craft form plugins. Kelsey Martins, who's the product manager for Freeform. He's in Central Time somewhere. I think he's in Canada. And Josh Crawford from Verb, who built and manages Formy, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. So thanks to those guys. We'll have them on for a few minutes after each of their, I present about each of their plugins. And they'll kind of give us an elevator pitch, a little bit of a history of it, answer any questions that you might have about their respective offerings. So again, here's the agenda: rolling your own form solution, using a Craft plugin, using a third-party solution, and a couple helpful other things that you should always remember, especially if you're using a plugin or creating your own solution. All right, rolling your own form solution. If your business case requires like some super complex business logic rules, or there's some obscure CRM that you have to connect to, or like security ops is like, you got to do everything in-house, we can't pay, for a third-party plugin, or, it's just out of the picture, then Craft is probably, besides Laravel, the best thing, package that you could like start out of the box and build your own solution and roll it up like that. That's probably the best solution for any of those use cases, is just start from scratch and build your own. How I've approached this in the past, before I started luckily being able to use Freeform for most projects, I'd create like a rudimentary form builder using Matrix or Neo, handling each of the blocks, for each of the form field types. That way the client can come in and build new forms structure them the way that they need to. Fields in there for, gosh, all the stuff that you could, like error messages and, anything that you would need encapsulated around that form itself, validation rules, all of that. And then easily just loop over those blocks on the front end to output, that markup. A simple module or a plugin can easily ingest all of that information on a submission and do whatever you need it to do, whether quickly, you can post to a controller method route for the data collection. And then, it's up to you what you need to do, how deep you need to go at that point. You could store it in the database, output it in the admin, with a template for client review. You can hit Craft email services and send out, notification emails, admin emails, drip campaigns, any of that stuff. You could, send the data wherever it needs to go, whether it's a CRM or MailChimp or a mailing list or something like that. The things you got to remember, of course, always need to validate. So you're going to have to include some type of form validation and sanitation service or a library or, something combined in there, because, that's 101 when it comes to taking data off of a form and using it in your back end. And with Craft, by default, you should always be having your CSRF tokens turned on. That's cross-site request forgery, making sure nobody's tampering with that data as it's coming across the wire. And honeypots, if you're extra careful to try to, block spam, prevent hacking and stuff like that. All of those things need to come into play, and we'll talk about this in a minute. Always beware if you're doing those kind of things for static page caching, because all of those have to be dynamic and need to be refreshed. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And of course, never, ever, ever output unsanitized form data on the front end. That's a very quick way to be hacked. I see it all the time for people that do it on their own, and just, if they don't put the extra effort in there, and somebody's going to get into your stuff quickly. Craft plugins. So there used to be a ton out there. There's not as many now for Craft 4. So we're going to kind of touch mostly on what's available for Craft 4 now. If your business case needs more of like a complex form builder, but connections to like less obscure CRMs, more common ones, Pardot, like HubSpot, whatever else it is. Or if you're just kind of like collecting stuff from a contact form, or if you're trying to like just hook up something to MailChimp for a mailing list. And your client wants to reduce development costs and not have to maintain something that you've baked yourself, then a free or low-cost Craft plugin is probably exactly the way to go. Contact form, and you can't really see the markup here on it's a screenshot from their default example. It's very simple, and I'm not going to knock on it. It works for what you need it to. You don't have anything in the admin. You manage the form directly in markup. All of the business logic and everything that goes along with it, whether it's validation, sending an email, what type of fields it is, all of that is managed directly in there. Not the way I would probably approach it, but it's free. It's first party. Pixel and Tonic manages it, and really it's probably best for just like simple contact forms or lead generation forms. There are a couple add-on plugins. I'm not sure actually who manages these. I don't think they are Pixel and Tonic. They're probably just somebody else who created them. But the Craft Contact Form plugin is very bare bones out of the box. No honeypot, no validation stuff, no back-end things, no way to actually like see what gets saved in the from the submissions. It's just like I collect the data and I send an email out, and that's basically it. So for Craft 4, there's two plugins that are pretty handy. The Contact Form Honeypot, which I'm a big fan of using those to try to stop automated bot spam, and the Contact Form Extensions, which actually does add in a confirmation email and a manageable Twig template, which helps tremendously, as well as saving them in the database. And I think it has a simple admin interface, that way you can actually see what's coming down the pipe. The Craft 3 version had a couple more plugins, and I'm not sure the status of whether these are going to be moved over to Craft 4, but it did expand on the plugin itself. By Contact Form Tuner offered like carbon copy, blind carbon copy, reply to, plain text options for the emails that got sent out, so you're not just using HTML. Contact form validation was pretty good for adding in some simple validation rules, whether it's like has to be an email or, that could be a certain length or something like that, pretty simple. And then I never used this. It was kind of scary, but to use a free plugin for a drip campaign, but that was out there and you could connect it with the service called Drip. That way you could start, drip campaign. If you're familiar with that, it's picking up somebody and then over a certain amount of time, emailing them again and again and again, to try to enhance that lead. And a second plugin, somebody just hit me on Discord. So let me make sure something's. Oh, it's these guys. Yeah, they'll be there in just a second. Actually, let me make sure they're not telling me that the audio is not working. Oh, cool. The Zoom link expired. All right, we'll shoot these guys a Zoom link in a second. Back to our presentation. Okay, so using a Craft plugin. If your business case uses like a more, oh, well, we already talked about that. So a free one that I've not used, full disclosure, is Wheelform. Has anybody used that? No idea what it's about. It looks like it's kind of the same thing as Contact Form. Here's a list of like the stuff that they offer. It did have a reCAPTCHA, which is pretty cool out of the box without an add-on. It did support translations, which I thought was neat for a free option. And it had a couple events that you could hook into if you needed to like send stuff to MailChimp or like some other service or something like that. Another free option. And if you need something that's a little more complex and it's not served well by a free plugin, say they need to see a little bit more feature rich, some more different fields like, I don't know, file uploads or like things like that, then there's two plugins that are really where you're going to need to go. Freeform, like I said before, made by SoulSpace, been around forever, ported over from Expression Engine, still an Expression Engine add-on, funny enough. Cost is $99 for the low-end version, $150 for the major version, and I think they have a discount through the end of the year. So if you were able to buy it, I think it's like $50 off each of those options for now, which is pretty good. Fully supported. SoulSpace is very invested in the plugin, so it's not going away anytime soon. And then For Me is kind of new, been around maybe 2 years-ish or so. Kind of the same thing. It's pretty feature rich. A lot of integrations, a lot of different field types, a lot of stuff in the back end, email templates, all of that jazz. So first we'll talk about Freeform. It is, well, up until we talked at our early dinner today, was the #1 paid plugin in the plugin store to date. I've heard now that it is actually Blitz has taken that over, if that's accurate, but possibly. He just topped, okay, yeah. But has been #1 for a long time. Is pretty much my go-to when I need to manage anything form related. It's reliable, intuitive. Everything's at your fingertips. Really good form builder on the back end. Gives you full control for simple or complex multi-page forms, which can be a challenge, especially if you've ever built anything like that on your own. Too many API integrations to even name. Everything you could think of, it can send data to or integrate with. Templating is very easy out of the box. It works. It has Tailwind and other types of markup, and then it's really easy to integrate that to your build system and your markup system. Everything's very intuitive, and you can really, honestly, you can install it and use the templates and just be going right out of the box right there. Of course, you really want to bake that into like your system and everything. And funny enough, Craft themselves use Freeform for their own contact form instead of their own contact form plugin, which I thought was really funny. So yeah, you really can't see these. So let's see, multi-page forms. With the Pro version, you can do conditional rules logic, which I've used a ton for stuff, which is really handy. It's got a cool builder where you can select the field and then, say if this field has this value and this has this value, then show this other field, which comes in very handy, all built, back on the back end with JavaScript. Has Ajax built in right away. Has a really cool thing for like multi-page forms where somebody can save their submission and then come back later with a cookie and finish out, which is really handy for usability. A really nice backend or admin view for like submissions. You can edit submissions. You can resend form notifications if things fail. If things do fail, it has really good error reporting. It can even send you an email to tell you that, the submission failed for whatever reason and the email didn't go out, which is super handy. It's GPDR compliant. You can automatically purge like spam data if you need to over a certain amount of periods. It has all kinds of different notification options. You can export data into, let's see, Excel, CSV, XML, JSON. Here's a nice list of CRMs that you can integrate to: Salesforce Leads, Opportunities, Pardot, HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, Pipedrive, Zoho, Leads and Deals, Insightly, Infusionsoft, I don't even know what that is, SharpSpring, Freshdesk. It has webhooks that you could hook like Slack, Zapier, any of those things to do whatever type of other kind of logic that you need to happen. Some of the coolest stuff, I think, and Informi does this too, is being able to hook into events, also hook into entries. You can save entries, edit entries, edit categories, things like that. So you really can like use this as a really powerful, you can even build it as like a page builder if you needed to. I definitely wouldn't recommend that, of course, but keep people in craft if they're doing that kind of stuff. But like I've used it for like say for example, I have a site that it's a bunch of artists and they manage all of their art data, so they can upload things to entries, they can enter all kinds of information attached to that entry, they can promote it to galleries and things like that. Well, all that's managed with Freeform and hooked up to their entries. Things go into draft status. Somebody has to go in and approve it to make sure that nobody's putting up anything that's unapproved or dangerous, and it just works like a breeze. It's so easy to mess with. It literally has support as form builder for every type of form field you can ever think of, all the way up to really nice form uploads where you can specify the volumes that they go into, which I think is really handy, especially if you're trying to stay strict like we talked about last month with image management and asset management. Let's see, what else do they have in here that's awesome? You can populate fields with element data or predefined options, which is really handy. I have another system that I built where, how can I describe it? If potential student athletes are coming to a college, they can go in, select their division, enter the sports that they've played and the level that they've played in high school and like their experience, and then we use that data with some business logic to filter the notification to the correct sports coach and assistant coach. That way not everybody's getting a bunch of data. It's really custom tailored, but the client has to be able to manage those coaches on the fly because coaches come and go, so they're able to use that in an entry set. And then my hidden field and Freeform that I'm connecting that stuff up to is hooked up to that entry set, and all the logic just works magically, right out of the box. Not magically, but everything we do is magic, right?
So it's kind of like cycle to like the routings, like the find like based on like members of the group.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And so it'll pick up like their gender, whether they're co-ed or not, the 4 sports that they play, and then what we kind of have some business logic rules that say what's their best ranking in each of those sports, because especially like a male sport, a person will come in and they've played baseball, football, and soccer, and we kind of look at like the stats in there to kind of place in the right funnel to the right coaches with the right priority. So like if they're heavy in soccer, then it's going to go to the right soccer coach and assistant coach, notification wise. That way they can follow up on that potential lead.
Is it sending to multiple different schools? So
no, it's all for the same school. Okay. No, but it's Andover University in near UMass. Yeah, and they are very, very heavy sports school, and that's where a lot of their inbound student ingestion comes from is a potential student. And that's a very competitive business, right now, especially for colleges. So it's important for them to quickly get the correct lead to the correct person. That way they can follow up on it, because, those kids they're applying to multiple schools, and it's a race against time for them. Captions available, spam blocking, all of that stuff right away. Email failure alerts, we already talked about that. And then mailing list API integrations, MailChimp, campaign monitor, constant contact, active campaign, dot mailer, Craft campaign plugin. So all of that's right out of the box. All right, so let's get Kelsey on here. Give me 1 second. Copy over the invite. Oh, Zoom, you're so much fun. So many options and buttons. All right, bear with me 1 second. Yep. Copy invitation. Here, 1 month, I'll get all this right. All right, so while we wait on Kelsey to join, maybe you guys can tell me about some of your form experience and what you guys like to use for your systems. Freeform? For me? For me? Yeah, yeah. I feel like I have to.
Definitely, it's just contact one, two, four. Just be called something.
It was for a second. Did I turn his video off?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
All right, there's Kelsey. How's it going today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. So we just kind of went over the feature set of Freeform, and I kind of described how I've used it, both from a very simple approach to super complex stuff that I know I've driven you crazy asking you about. Why does this not work, or how do I actually do this in Freeform? So maybe if you could give us like a quick elevator pitch about like how Freeform got started, what made you guys kind of elevate it from a expression engine plugin to like a really rich and vibrant Craft plugin, and then if you have anything you want to share about what the future holds for Freeform, and hopefully everybody can hear you okay.
Okay. You can hear me all right? Can you hear me all right?
All right, cool. Go for it.
Okay. Well, first off, thanks for having me here. I didn't know you were going to be that thorough with Freeform, so I have a script here that I got to throw out. But yeah, basically, it was about 16 years ago that SoulSpace started building software that was for Expression Engine, and And then 6 years ago, we started developing plugins for Craft. At the time, we noticed that there were several form plugins available for Craft, but none of them seemed to be as powerful and intuitive as we sort of envisioned Freeform could be. And yeah, we basically went ahead and built it, and been constantly improving it the last 6 years. Basically, some of our focuses for Freeform, we have a very strong focus on reliability. We know that it's if the Freeform doesn't work correctly, that could cost you a client or a lead or whatever, and that can result in lost revenue. So we have lots of built-in features to address that. And I think you've mentioned some of those as well.
Yep.
And then we also have a lot of the features that we include focus on making sure that Freeform is ready for wherever your project takes you. I mean, I have here one common scenario is that a client's project requirements could change over time. For example, perhaps the website's needs start out as a simple sign-up form. Then months later, it needs to be a multi-page form that creates and registers users, accepts subscription payments, sends data off to a CRM integration, and allows them to save their progress and come back later. Freeform can handle all of this effortlessly without needing to change your form plugin, install other plugins, or create a custom module. Yeah, and I don't know if you want me to go into some of our future things and
Yeah, we'd love to hear that. I'm always enjoying when a new Freeform version comes out, I always like immediately, even if I'm not going to upgrade to it, I go and read release notes to see if I can solve any problems or business use cases of something that I wasn't able to solve before, or see an easier path to solve or enhance somebody's lead generation. I think Freeform does a really good job with that, especially with describing what is coming up in a release note, and also like your email digest and the notices that come up in the dashboard about what's on the horizon and stuff. I think that's really nice. But yeah, we'd love to hear that.
Okay. I think one thing we did recently, well, I should also say the past year we've been focusing on kind of cleaning up odds and ends of maybe little awkward things about Freeform, annoyances and stuff like that, things that were maybe made Freeform a little less reliable than we wanted to. And I feel like the past, I'd say a year or longer, I think we've sort of cleaned up a lot of things that way. And so a lot of, maybe they seemed kind of boring, but it was a constant, steady set of improvements and fixes. And well, one thing that we introduced was the form type concept. What we're thinking is that obviously, probably in most cases, Freeform will probably accommodate whatever it is you need to get done. But in some cases, you might need something a little deeper. And we launched the surveys and polls form type.
Yes.
Which essentially kind of fills in all the remaining gaps in order to actually make you have a sort of complete the idea of having a survey or a poll, and be able to view it as a report. And we have a handful of other things that we plan on implementing as well. And the idea is that Freeform is already a form, it's already a builder, it already manages data in itself. So rather than needing a survey plugin and needing a form plugin and needing a comments plugin and a scheduler plugin, perhaps Freeform can do all of that for you. And you're not installing a whole bunch of other plugins, figuring them out and all that. So that's sort of one direction we're going with things. We're planning on having more form types. The other thing that we're working on is we're redesigning the form builder. So we're putting a lot of the form builder. We still believe it to be fairly robust and intuitive, but it is also 6 years old, and we haven't made a whole lot of changes to it. So we do plan on, not just plan on, we're already in the process of, I don't know, maybe we're 25% the way there. We're currently redesigning and building the form builder. But the idea is that we want to, yeah, just deal with some of the awkward stuff, because I know what, if any one of you guys have used Freeform 1 or Freeform 2, you can see how far things have gone over the past few years. And we just sort of kept adding more and more to it, and the form builder maybe worked perfectly in the earlier versions, but the now with all the extra features and stuff in there, some things are a little awkward to work with, and we recognize that. So we plan on addressing a lot of those issues with a new form builder.
That's very cool. You're humble on some things that people might not care for as much with the builder. I think it's awesome. I don't work with them there, but I use it a ton. So kind of maybe some of the nuances that might be a little weird for other people, I've just gotten used to, and they just kind of become part of the workflow at that point. But that's always important with a paid plugin, is iterating on it, improving it, taking in suggestions and feedback from the people that use it, but actually acting on that is very important too. So hats off to you for taking on that initiative.
Yeah, well, and I realize part of it is because Freeform is so established, for us to rebuild the builder is risky, in the sense that people, if we change it too much or change the flow too much, it can become a negative thing for customers. So I'll also add to this that our goal with the new builder is to still have it feel familiar to existing customers. And I imagine that most people will, the changes that we make, most people will say, oh, that makes sense. That I'm glad that clutter's gone and tucked away there. I'm glad this is organized that way. I think a lot of it'll make sense to most people. And of course, I think when we do have something ready, we will have an extensive beta period where we collect feedback from people as well, and see what people think as well, because we want to be very careful not to disturb people's flows and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, it's always a challenge when it comes to even like onboarding people that have used it forever to a new system. You're going to face challenges there with everybody.
Yeah,
very cool. Well, we're going to keep going. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, appreciate it. Oh, does anybody have any questions for Kelsey while he's here? Nothing about code. He already told me that Gustav's is in Latvia. He won't be able to. He's the main developer, and he's not interested in coming on at night like that.
He's sleeping right now.
Okay.
Architecture. When you introduce a break change, how do you go about that?
Did you hear him? He said when you introduce a breaking change, like how do you approach that?
Okay, that's a good question. Obviously, our goal is to have no breaking changes, and I would be lying if I said that we didn't do that over the past couple of years. But what we've done with Freeform is we have made some changes where our intentions were to be 100% not a breaking change, like Freeform 3.12, 3.13. And the problem is sometimes with so many people using it, sometimes there's someone doing something obscure enough that it breaks it for them. So, and I mean, there's been sometimes where it hasn't been too obscure, but we just overlooked it. But sometimes the change we needed to make was so important that it was the lesser of two evils, I guess. But we're now at the point where I feel like we've shored up a lot of the problems that we really wanted to, and we're now taking advantage of the Craft 4 update, so that what we actually did was Freeform 4. We made a pile of breaking changes and we saved them up for then, essentially, because the idea and hope is that not only is it, of course, good practice to do your breaking changes on a major version, but to have them while you're already in that mode of, okay, it's Craft 4, I should be more cautious during the beta. It's Freeform 4 beta, I'd be more cautious. So you're more likely to be cautious and you know, rather than just having Freeform 4 on Craft 3, and then maybe you just treat it a little less serious. So we made a bunch of breaking changes for Freeform 4, and that said, it shouldn't really break much. But if it's going to affect someone, it'll likely affect them then. And then from here on in, we're just going to, with Craft's annual release cycle, we're just going to save up all of our breaking changes for each year, launching a new major version. So that should make Freeform even more reliable and even more stable for, just knowing that you can upgrade and not have to worry as much about something breaking.
Very good.
I have follow-up questions.
Awesome. Go for it, Troy.
So obviously you have to integrate with a lot of third parties. So, I mean, in my role, I write a shit ton of middleware, and like everybody knows with middleware is eventually like somebody will turn off an endpoint and you will never get alerted. Like, like it won't be in their release channel. It won't be on the mailing list. Like we used to have a React remote to control Spotify here, but like Spotify literally turned off Loop Spotify like in April, and they didn't mail the Linux mailing list that says this endpoint's going away. They just turned it off. And then so like obviously like with the big integrations, like Zapier or HubSpot, like you can plan for, those influence shifting, and you can kind of set those milestones in your project. But when you're dealing with these smaller APIs, this is a side note. Like I started writing like scrapers and like beautiful soup on forums and shit to like alert me, of like where these third parties are going. Where like obviously and then they kind of consolidate it all, and then obviously have like continuous integration testing where like I'm basically running the same unit test weekly, and if they ever fail, right, I get alerted. But that's like, it's one of those things of hopefully I'll see it before the customer does. But if a unit test fails, that means the endpoint's already down, so I got to scramble to fix it. Do you have any? How do you approach that? Run into any of those issues with third-party endpoints or integration breaking, or where like say like when Instagram changed how their apps worked, right? And you had to work on like creating a custom app just to verify the profile to like pull stats or likes or whatever. Have you run into anything like that? What's your design paradigm for working with those third parties? Did you hear me?
Yeah, it's hard, it's a little bit muffly, but I got the gist of what you're asking. APIs are definitely our biggest headache. and over the many years of experience, we knew to tread carefully with APIs. So I know there are the temptation for us sometimes is to support as many API integrations as possible, as many CRMs, email marketing services. But the problem is once you create that integration as an official one, you are then on the hook for supporting it, even if it's one customer that's benefiting from it. And it maybe all at once at earlier stages, it seems like no problem. But then as the years go by, you now have this massive tail of all these integrations that you got to keep up with. So while we have a lot of integrations, what you might notice is that we don't have 100 of them or whatever, because we're choosing not to intentionally support 100 of them. And it might make sense if we sold 10 times the amount of copies of Freeform and the team got bigger and whatever, but I think we're trying to keep it under control a bit to stick with the more popular stuff. But to answer your question, that is part of it, I guess. But the other part is that we basically sometimes find ourselves where we have to build a whole new version of the integration, and we can do that, and then we just set the old one as a sort of a legacy version. So for example, Constant Contact, which has been our biggest thorn in our side, and I'm talking even like 10 years ago or whatever too, they just recently changed something again. And essentially we had to rebuild the integration. So what we did was we built a second integration for it. And then we have that, going back to our reliability thing, we have that important update notification feature where if you have things set up in Freeform, you can get an alert from us saying your site is using an old version of the API integration. You need to update to Freeform whatever with the new integration by such and such date or whatever. Otherwise, this will stop working. So this is, generally speaking, we seem to get a notification, a heads up from these places when these changes are happening, and then we have enough time to address them, and then we notify our customers, and it's all automated because that system just knows that you have the old one installed. Now we don't know who has it installed, but the checker sort of works locally at your site's level and does the check. So I mean, that's sort of how we've gone around it. What we do want to do is in the future go like potentially even make an integration version for like a version for each integration as we make adjustments, so you can actually use an older one or a newer one or whatever. But we're just not sure exactly how we're going to do it, but it's definitely been a pain point on our part. Certain ones like Stripe, because it works a little differently from the CRM integrations. That one's been a bit of a headache, especially when that what was it, that verification process change happened. Then it really broke things up for us. But yeah, it's definitely an ugly thing. It's not a fun part to support all of these, but it's necessary, and we do our best, and we do try to plan for it. But it's not a perfect system, but we do have measures in place to make it smoother for everyone.
Awesome. He gave you the thumbs up.
Thank you.
I think that's the story of all of our lives, is the work might not work again in a couple of months there. Check stuff on a Friday, right? Does this work? I don't know. Awesome. Any more questions for Kelsey?
Yeah, I'm curious to know what the future is for Express One.
Oh, Express Forms.
Was that kind of just an experiment?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I heard all the question. You're asking if like what's sort of the status of Express Forms?
Yeah, status, Craft 4 compatibility. Are you going to continue iterating, adding to it as Freeform grows as well? Or was that more of just an experiment?
I'd be lying if I said, I guess you could say, well, it wasn't quite an experiment. It was, we did have hopes that it would be maybe more popular than it is currently. I would still say it's still popular, but we were hoping it would have more success. It was designed with the idea that a lot of people, not a lot, but there was a segment of the customer base would say Freeform was too opinionated. It did too much. It assumed too much. And I think we probably addressed a lot of that over the past year and a half with a bunch of changes we made. But the idea with Express Forms was that it was going to be lightweight on purpose. It was going to not do everything like Freeform on purpose. And it was also going to be a cheaper price point, or in this case, it's free, at least for the light version. Part of it too was that we were able to experiment with some cool ideas that we knew we couldn't exactly experiment with so easily on Freeform, given that it's established and we didn't want to break things so much. But if anyone's used both Express Forms and Freeform, you might have noticed that Freeform has taken some ideas from Express Form. Some of the ideas that we pulled off very well with Express Forms. It did work out well in the sense that we were able to say, that's a really solid idea. We pulled it off. It's working well. Let's carry that over to Freeform so it can benefit from that as well. As far as Express Form's future, we don't have any plan to cancel it or get rid of it. We're continuing to support it. It has a Craft 4 version available. In terms of where we go with it, I'd like to see us, we do have some sort of tentative plans to perhaps add some more powerful features to it in the Pro version. Not that they'd be, overkill big things, but just maybe a little bit more where we get some feedback where people are maybe actually wanting to predefine some values of a field in the form builder, etc. Maybe just do some stuff like that, expand the spam protection options, maybe the API integration offerings. So yeah, we do have some plans to do that, but it is maybe a lower priority compared to Freeform's progress. But I don't think we have plans to get rid of it anytime soon, but we'll just continue to support it. It's more the question of whether or how soon it'll get additional features.
That was helpful.
Okay.
Awesome. Thumbs up. Great. I think we're going to move on. I appreciate your time tonight for sure. Whoops, there goes our mic. Thanks, Kelsey.
Okay, thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. All right, let's remove him. And we will move on quickly to Freeform. Forming, and then we'll get Josh on as a panelist so he can talk and tell us his information as well. Okay, so sounds like we're all pretty familiar as well with Formy. It's been around, and he can confirm this, maybe 2 years or so. Offers a lot of the same stuff that Freeform does, a little bit different of a UI perspective of things. But essentially all the same type of fields, all the same type of like spam protection, a lot of the same API integrations, privacy and data retention rules, things like that. One thing I didn't touch on with Freeform too is that it fully supports GraphQL and all the headless, offerings that that Craft does out of the box. Also, queries and everything are available through Formy with GraphQL, as long as you're used to doing that. Solid price point at $99, and I'm not going to go super deep into this because we kind of talked about all the stuff that a form plugin can do with Freeform. So let's get Josh on here. Bear with me one second. Let me find him. I'm going to promote him to a panelist. I'm not going to turn his video off this time. Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it will cause feedback or not.
All right, Josh, you hear us?
Hey, Justin, you there?
Oh, yeah, that sounds way better. Yeah, we're trying to mess with our AV here to get it to where the crowd can hear you. Welcome.
Gotcha. Thanks. Don't know, can you see my video?
Yes, we can.
Oh, cool. I can't see myself, so apologies if I do any silly faces. Oh, now I can see
That's
myself.
all right.
Oh, cool. Cool. Sorry, you go.
Go ahead. Yeah, we just had Kelsey on talking about Freeform, and kind of got to ask you basically the same stuff. Maybe give us a little rough history of how Formy came about. What the future holds for it. Any nuances that you could let us know about. But sounds like a lot of people here in the room are using.
You might mute yourself.
Oh, am I muting? Yeah.
Since it's an external system.
Yep, totally.
Probably want you. That way you won't get them back.
Yeah, just want to make sure I'm still streaming to YouTube with it. That's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Josh, go ahead. Give us your elevator pitch, and then.
No worries. Well, I was listening to Kelsey before as well, just to take a sticky beak. So yeah, that's right. Like for me, from a feature set, it's pretty similar to Freeform. Like the feature set, it's pretty close to parity. But there's certainly some things that Formy does that Freeform doesn't do. But generally speaking, you've got a form builder, you've got fields, you've got integrations, you've got email notifications, spam stuff, all the regular things that you'd expect in a forms plugin. And I can go through some of the features in a second, just of what Formy is different. But to step back into a bit of a history, so we used.
All right, hold on a second. Our Apple TV just updated, so bear with me.
What a terrible time to update.
All right, we're back. Can you hear us?
Yep, gotcha.
All right, let me turn you up a little bit because now we're on my laptop here. So,
Gotcha.
All right, cool. Keep going.
Sweet. All right, so we used Sprat Forms and Freeform for many, many years on most of our client sites. But what we were finding after a couple of years of those is that we were starting to get a bit of client feedback, just just in terms of the usability, the UX. So where I think Formy differentiates from the other forms plugins out there is probably two things. There's two sort of main things that we've sort of tried to focus on, which is one's the UX side of things. So giving people, clients, users of the plugin some really good user experience for when they're building their forms. And secondly, to make the front end side of things really easy and simple to use. So the UX side of things, like I said, we're starting to get a lot of feedback from our clients saying, such and such is hard to use. I don't really know what this twig sort of thing is, code that you've added in this field or in this email notification. I don't understand what a handle is. I don't understand what this field is. And after a while, this sort of feedback was piling up a little bit. And so we thought, right, let's maybe put some ideas down. Let's sort of mess around. Maybe this turns into a pull request for these other plugins. So we basically just designed the form builder based on this feedback. We did a lot of user research and sort of threw it in front of the clients that we felt would provide good feedback, that sort of a little bit sort of on the techie side, which is good. And we sort of started building it and thought, okay, this is probably getting a little bit too big for just a pull request to these other plugins. So pretty much we ended up just building it from scratch. And pretty much, forms plugins are pretty huge once you sort of open up those cans of worms. But we just started iterating on that and putting it on a few client sites and working with a couple of our sort of more tech-minded clients that were a bit sort of cluey or had really interesting uses for or interesting needs for their forms. And we just worked with them, pretty much just built it up over the years and, released Formy. Yeah, it was about 2 years ago, I think, 2020 maybe. Time flies. And yeah, it's pretty much just gone from there. So we've really tried to, with pretty much every decision we've made, we've tried to really champion the user experience for clients when they're building their forms. So if you're interested there, we've got a blog post that discusses it. If you hop on the Craft plugin store, search for Formy, there's a little sort of note right at the very top that links off to our blog post, or you can head to verb.io to have a read through one of our blog posts, where I'm not going to cover it all today, but it kind of outlines some of the many tiny little features that I think are really important. And I think our clients kind of agree that they're really important. Just things like dropping like the term handle for things. So as developers, we're used to handles. So, you have sections and global sets and all that sort of stuff in Craft. You've got a name for it and a handle's how you reference it in templates. It's fine. But for a client, they don't really know what that is. And what's worse is they don't know the implications of changing that. So, if for whatever reason, if a client was able to change the handle of a section, that'd have a pretty catastrophic effect on the front end of the site. So similarly, if they change the handle of a form or a field and they don't know what they're doing, that could really mess things up, especially if you're dealing with the fields on the front end. But of course, for developers, it's super important to have a handle. So things just as simple as like just hiding that away, or being able to quickly like press a little refresh button that regenerates the handle based on the name of the field. We found that was like a super annoying thing, even just for us, where you change the title, the name of a field, and the handle would still reference the old handle. And you just end up with this weird sort of case of they don't really match anymore. Yeah, lots of just UX sort of stuff. So that's pretty much our main focus, is just to make it really good for clients. And then the other side is on the front end. So obviously, most other plugins just have a single line sort of twig tag that outputs the HTML of a form. But we wanted to take it a little step further and be a bit opinionated about even the CSS and the JavaScript that gets output with the form, which is very uncraft-like. And we certainly didn't want to get into the WordPress side of things where it was, a short code and it spits out a whole bunch of rubbish on the page. We certainly don't want to get to that. But we wanted to really cater for, I suppose you could call them the low budget sites. So let's say the 4-6 page marketing site where, you've got a homepage, about us, services, team, contact page. Maybe it's not a huge budget site. Maybe it's about, I don't know, 5,000-7,000 AUD, but you get the idea. And you really just want a contact form, and you want it to look good. You want it to function good. You want it to have client-side validation. Maybe you want to integrate it with like something like MailChimp. or at least have the option to grow into that. So you know, you could use like the contact form plugin from Pixel and Tonic, which is free, but you know, that doesn't, I think from memory, I don't think that records the submission as in the control panel. Maybe it has email notifications. It's been a while since I've looked at it. But the important thing is we wanted to have that sort of kind of no nonsense. You stick it in. Obviously, you can tweak the buttons and the styles and everything a little bit. But for, you know, the 80% time, you just want to throw in a contact form plugin, couple of fields. It's really no nonsense. Saved you 10, 20 hours of custom development work of dealing with the JavaScript, dealing with CSS, dealing with all the accessibility best practices, all that sort of stuff. But of course, we certainly don't want to leave developers out in the cold. So you can totally, of course, go completely custom. You can ditch the JavaScript, ditch the CSS, just as sort of, you know, and that's totally fine too. But they're kind of the main two sort of big points with Formy that that I guess we've always been about. In terms of features, yeah, look, we support a heap of different integrations. There's probably about 60 different integrations that we support. So we went a bit crazy, but that's all right. There's a concept of synced fields. So, you know, you might have 10 different forms on a site, but you always have an email field, and it seems a bit silly to create 10 different email fields. Well, you can sort of use this synced field concept to create it once, and then every time on every subsequent form you create, you can just reference that original email field. And if you update any settings about it or the title or whatever, it is replicated across all your forms. So that can be really useful. It's kind of like I guess it's kind of like a global sort of field setting, I suppose. Another cool thing that I really like is the import export feature. So because, and everyone's probably faced this, because forms and submissions are elements like entries for Craft, they're per environment. So unlike project config, you can't really sort of move them per environment. But what's terrible is that, you know, locally or on your staging site, you could spin up this, you know, 50, 100 field form that's really detailed. And then you've got no way to put that onto the production site once you've finished testing it. So you spend another couple of hours replicating that again on production. So with Formy, you can basically export a form on one environment and then import it on another. And it's smart enough to figure out whether that form exists to replace it or a new form to upload it. Carries across all your email notifications and stuff. So I think that's really cool. For us as developers to be able to handle that. But the only other point I suppose is, and I kind of hate to always be comparing to Freeform, but Kelsey was first, so I can compare to him, is with our headless functionality, we also support mutations for submissions. And I don't think that Freeform supports mutations, but that's really cool because you can do like a full GraphQL thing where you're querying for the form and the fields, but then you're also using a GraphQL mutation to create a submission. And we've got a demo project that uses Vue 3 and Vite that you're welcome to have a look for. And that's pretty much ready to go, which is pretty neat. A few people have really appreciated that. Everyone loves headless these days. But yeah, look, I'm not going to go through all the different fields that we do because most of them are pretty standard. Bunch of integrations. But that's kind of that's more than a 5-minute spiel, but that's the spiel for Formy, I suppose.
We held the elevator through.
Sorry, what was that?
So we held the elevator for your long elevator pitch.
Thanks. I was going to say, yeah, future wise, if because everyone always likes new things. So look, like Kelsey and like a bunch of other plugins out there, we're using the Craft for break to include a lot of breaking changes. And it's just a good best practice for whenever you increment a major version of something to also try and bundle in breaking changes. So we're doing that. So at the moment we're working on Formy 2 for Craft 4, and we're almost sort of finished with that. And that has included, what is that? What is that even included? So we've added payment support, which Freeform already does, but we've included Stripe and PayPal. So if with Stripe has single payments and subscription-based payments. So basically you can add a little credit card field to your form. If somebody, if a particular form wants to sell membership to something or sell an ebook or basically anything behind like a sort of a paywall, that can sort of manage that, which is pretty cool. But we're also working on a completely revamped templating sort of methodology. So the tricky part for us is that, we've got our sort of opinionated templates for the front end. And of course, people can roll their own and whatnot. But it also means that those need to be maintained for that project by that developer to keep in line with Formy changes that might happen. So we want to kind of get away with that, and we've got some really cool ideas. We'll probably be releasing them this week, I reckon. We'll gather some feedback with how it sits with developers. But for things like Tailwind classes, Bootstrap classes, it will hopefully make it a lot easier for you to customize the HTML that's generated by the forms without losing out on all the stuff that Formy will do and keeping it up to date. So we've got some cool ideas there. And then further down the track, we've always, from when we first started Formy, we've always wanted to include surveys and polls functionality. So that's something that we'll definitely be bundling in with Formy in the longer term roadmap, but that'll probably be next year.
Very nice.
Cool.
Just check
So yeah, hopefully
YouTube
that's answered most of your questions. But yes, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to shoot them.
Yeah, anybody got any questions for Josh while he's here? Nope.
I think one of the things that we've had the most trouble with is like the third-party integrations, like say you integrate with Salesforce or something. There's still such a pain because you have to like build the form in both places. Have you and then just mirror everything across? Have you had, that's like an unsolvable problem, right? We're not just dumb. Like, is there any careful to wish for? Yeah.
You're saying like in the context of a Pardot form,
Yeah. Like
making sure that the fields match up.
Or like form captures.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
different. Yeah. And usually I have to
So-
set it up both places.
Yeah,
Still
so
building it.
there is a that's an interesting one. So with all our integrations, we have a concept of like field mapping. So you'll have you'll be able to load in the data objects from Salesforce or any other integrations into Formy, and then it'll side by side. It'll have your Formy fields here, your remote fields are here. Pretty much connect the dots really, and they don't have to match. Like you might have a name field that is split into first name, last name, but Salesforce only has a single field. You could sort of, merge those into one sort of thing. They don't need to be named the same. So there's that kind of thing. But yes, I guess at the end of the day, you do kind of have to build your form in Formy in one place. And then, Pardot, you have to build the same form. Pardot's a bit different, I suppose. But yeah, like a CRM side of things is a bit different because there's no concept of like a form on Salesforce. But yeah, like Pardot or HubSpot have their own sort of forms concepts. And there's another one, I think, SharpSpring, I think. Yeah, that's kind of just how it has to be. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like with especially with Pardot, they really want to lean you to, using their products. And, well, we have a landing page and you can directly integrate, and I feel like with them being such a closed system, that's not going to be changing anytime soon. I mean, their API is already enough to work with, and seems like it every couple of months, more stuff comes off of it as opposed to adding to it like an API really should. So yeah, it seems like it's de facto.
Yeah. And one of the other big differences with Form is that any integrations, any email notifications are run through Craft's queue system. So we find that's really useful for if and when errors do occur with either the connection details or the APIs changed or whatever, that data is stored in Craft as a queue job. It's just sitting there as failed. And so whether it's a bug on our end, whether it's just something that needs to be configured, you can make those changes and then rerun that job so no data is lost, which is pretty handy because, yeah, as Kelsey's mentioned before, sometimes these things are out of our control. Constant Contact decided to change their API endpoints and gave us 30 days to notice to change it. So, these things just happen and sometimes they're just out of our control.
Same thing with Pardot's API changes last year. At least they gave us 60 days
right.
and those blackout periods where it was like, okay, for 2 days it's not going to work, so you can test your application. That was helpful, but still kind of a pain in the ass. But yeah,
That's it.
Part
Awesome.
of our jobs, though, right? Great. Well, thanks, Josh. Anybody have questions? Awesome. Thanks for your time, man.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Catch up.
Sorry about that, fellas. I had MDM auto installs for updates after hours.
That's okay. Perfect timing. Yeah, it's all right. We made it through it. All right, this is the last bit. Using a third-party service solution. So inevitably, you're going to have a client that either already has a Salesforce account, wants to use their Pardot forms, has been sold by some salesperson somewhere that FormStack's the best and Wufoo can do this. It's inevitable. It's part of our job. So there's a ton of ones out there. They're all going to integrate directly with an iframe for the most part. So, that we all know the nuances to that you're not going to be able to be pushing data, at least easily, on the fly or dynamic data to the iframe. It's closed off. You're probably going to have a little bit of a pain installing it and making sure it stays in. You're going to have to put in like iframe resizer or something, to make sure that it's not going to have scroll bars and just all the stuff that comes along with embedding an iframe form. But, we've already talked about Pardot clearly is the most popular. Salesforce is $1 billion company because they are $1 billion company, and they've really kind of taken over the whole CRM, field of things. Pardot does require a paid Salesforce account. There's no free level. It's always going to come in as an iframe. I have worked with Freeform's integration, which is kind of like what Jake was saying before. It's really just a field-to-field mapping to the best of what you have set up in Pardot, including sometimes some custom fields. A lot of times it's mostly just the standard lead ingestion information that you can post to. It does have an API. It is an extreme pain in the ass to work with, both from an authentication standpoint, setting up the app, maintaining the app, and sending data to it. I mean, it kind of works, but you don't have access to like Pardot's user journey data, which is kind of like the big thing with Pardot, is that they know everywhere you've been on the internet for like ever. And so that's why they really rule at lead qualifying, because they know that stuff and they can kind of track it a little bit better. It's closed off. You really have no way to access that data from the API, because it's going to be a competing product to their landing pages and their form. It makes sense from a business standpoint. But I'll be completely honest, it's super great for connections to Salesforce. I mean, we had a big client on the SoulSpace side that used Freeform for a long time, and we created a plugin that did the same thing I was just describing and tracked inbound UTM query params and kept up with them and send them specifically, no matter what form they submitted on the site, to a specific Pardot campaign. And it works, but you're kind of losing out on all of that rich data mining and collection that you can if you were just using a straight up Pardot form. So now they're starting to move into putting part-out forms everywhere, you know, and we've styled them, and the user's never going to know the difference. They look exactly the same. It's just Salesforce to Salesforce, you know, they're gonna push their products over anybody. Out of everything else, the rest of these honestly kind of suck. HubSpot, the FormStack, haven't used it in years. JotForm, never used it. Cognito Forms is free. So, you know, if you've got a cheapo client that doesn't want to use a free plugin, then that's a great opportunity for them. Wufoo, I was really surprised that they even exist anymore. If you remember Chris Coyer, that was like his big thing back like, what, 10 years ago or something like that, you know. The wackiest form builder you've ever seen in your life with like colors and elephants and just like weird stuff. It's still out there and still pushing forms out. And then there's like Zoho, PandaDoc. Typeform is pretty popular and is more robust than a lot of these, but they're there. Definitely would encourage your client to kind of use stuff that's more parity to Craft than it is, you know, to a third party, but they have their benefits and a lot of drawbacks too. All right, last thing, some common gotchas that are always going to get you with forms that are either hosted on your Craft site using a plugin, or if you've done your own solution, like we talked about at the beginning. I think the 3 hardest things in my job are naming stuff, setting up a server, and getting damn emails to go out from a server. Do not depend on PHP mailer. That's coming out of default in Craft with all of your settings. Just go ahead and move to Mailgun or SendGrid or Postmark, something that you can verify that the email's getting out. If it doesn't get out, you have a way to track it and know that it's not getting out, and then you can get metrics from those emails. It's going to save you a tremendous amount of grief, because the PHP mailer, it's like, I guess it sent. I don't know, like, who knows? I guess maybe, you know. So there's no way to track it. There's no logs or any of that stuff. It's extremely unreliable. With things like SendGrid and Mailgun and Postmark, you can go the extra mile with like DKIM records and stuff to verify your server, and then you're pretty well confident that your emails are actually going to get to people. Now, whether they land in spam or not, you know, that's just a battle that you'll fight forever. But you know that they're actually going to get out of the server and into the pipes that are going out, you know, to the world. The second thing, static file caching like Blitz will always interfere with your form validation. It's a no-brainer. You're saving a static version of the HTML. The CSFR token has to be unique and match the user's cookie value. Well, if you saved a static HTML version, you've got somebody else's CSRF token in there. It's going to work for a little bit, and then it's going to stop working, and you're never going to know. So if you're using Blitz, but clearly, like I said, non-validated form, it's going to fail on submission. You're going to get a 400 error, because it's not going to validate, which means it's not going to make it to any of the form plugins stuff. It's not going to save. It's just going to land in space and, you know, log file somewhere. Same thing with dynamic honeypot values. Freeform has like its hash values and things like that for extra security, for spam prevention. All of that stuff has to be dynamic and has to be unique to that render and that page paint. So always use Ajax. Super easy. Freeform and Formy both have quick instructions on how to use Ajax to quickly grab a fresh CSRF token, match it up to the user's cookie value, and insert it dynamically to the page. I've actually been using Sprig to do this lately, because I think Sprig's super freaking awesome, and it's even easier. It's like 2 lines of code, and it magically just works, and it integrates so well with Blitz that you know, it's just a no-brainer. But you know, if you're a junior or something like that and you've never dealt with this, you could bang your head forever and never understand why this stuff doesn't work. It works for me. Well, that's great, because your token is the one that's actually stored in the HTML's value, you know, and it's like nobody else can use that. So just be careful with that kind of stuff moving forward. So that's it for our form talk. Our next meetup will be Monday, July 18th. We will be at the Crafted offices right across of South Boulevard over here. And we're going to talk about hosting solutions. So you know as well as I do, there's a gazillion hosting companies out there. They're all going to say that they can run your website perfectly and better than anybody else. But we all know there's a specific stack and specific stuff that needs to be tuned and PHP packages that need to be installed to make sure that your craft site's going to work properly and run properly. Pixel and Tonic has recommended hosts, and they all have finely tuned servers. They all have deployment services built in, knowledgeable support. That way people aren't going to be like, what is this package that you're using? You know, they're going to know what you're talking about and help you solve problems quickly when it gets to that and keep your site running at top notch. So we're going to talk about different hosting companies that you should use, ones that you definitely shouldn't use at all, GoDaddy. And then we're going to have two special guests like we did tonight, Nevin Lean, who's the owner of Architech, longtime EE developer and host, specializing in craft hosting these days, as well as Laravel hosting. They're all based in the US. And then Matt Graysock, I think is how you say his name, owner of Serve, which kind of takes a different approach to hosting, where a lot of the deployment services, image management services and stuff are kind of abstracted away, and kind of takes more of a Fort Rabbit type approach to things, where you can get into the server and do stuff if you need to, but for the most part, it's hands off. Just a completely different approach. His hosting company's hosted in EU, really specializes in craft specifically, and they're kind of going to do like the guys did tonight, where they just kind of give their elevator pitch and talk about what makes their hosting approaches unique and a little history of where they got there. Huge thanks to them for coming on. Nevin's on the West Coast, so he'll be good in the afternoon, but Matt is in Denmark, I think. So he's like, you know, I'm going to be a couple in by the time that you guys are meeting. So super helpful to them. And thanks to you guys for hosting us at Crafted that night. Thank you again to Soul Space for hosting all the food, and to Troy and the crew at Mode for hanging out with us. And good night, unless you guys have any questions for me about anything. I feel like this was fairly thorough. Hopefully helpful for everybody. Thank you a bunch. Always enjoy doing these.